David Benkof, and I got an email from the organizers of the Shabbat here at Limmud saying, "Hey, do you want to present on Shabbat?" And I thought, well, it's Parshat Vayechi, which is the last parsha of Bereshit, and I have what to say about all of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. And here's how it came up. I unfortunately I had a concussion, and I had to get a neuropsychological workup. My doctor wanted me to have them say what I was good at, what I wasn't good at. I'm recovered, but at the time I had some deficits. And in the course of the exam, it was like all day, and all kinds of tests with numbers and drawing things and this and that. But there was a section that's like an IQ test where they ask you a bunch of kind of trivia. So, who wrote this play, and what was, how far is it from Los Angeles to New York, and all kinds of, right? And one of the questions was, what is the theme of the book of Genesis? And I have an answer, which I'm going to share with you, but I knew that wasn't what was on her sheet for the right answer. So I said the creation of the world and the founding of the Jewish people. That's not what I really think the theme of the book of Genesis is. And the theme of the book of Genesis, in my opinion, is the undermining of the system of primogeniture. What is primogeniture? It's the concept that the firstborn son is the one who is special. Now, if you look at the book of Genesis, every time there's more than one son, it's not the firstborn who is special. And special means different things in different generations. But if you look at the source sheet, and we're going to look at 6 different sources, in Genesis 4, 9, 17, 27, and then 48 and 49, we have different cases of firstborns not being the favored one. This is, that's a hint that it's a theme. When something shows up from the very first parsha, which is Bereshit with Cain and Abel, all the way to the very last one, and in this week's parsha we have both the blessing for Reuven and his brothers, and we have the blessing for Ephraim and Manasseh. Something's going on. So what I would like to do is we'll read some of the sources and talk about what's going on, what it means that the favored son is not the first one. Hi. And then we have to ask the question, what's the point? What is the Torah trying to tell us? So keep that in the back of your mind as we read the texts. And I'm going to give one other twist that thickens the plot. Does anybody know what the law in the book of Deuteronomy is about older sons and younger sons?
Double portion of inheritance?
Well, not specifically.
The oldest son.
But it says you may not favor your younger son when it comes time to apportion an inheritance. You have to favor the older. You can't just because you like the other wife or you like the younger son. You have to go with the system of primogeniture. So we have a book, Genesis, that whose very theme goes in the opposite direction of what the Jewish law part of the Torah says. That's something we're going to discuss. So,
you say in Deuteronomy, it says that you have to favor the firstborn.
Correct. And you can't favor the younger.
You're giving them a double portion, isn't it?
I don't have the verse here, but yeah, there's that idea in the Torah. But the book of Genesis doesn't seem to think that way. Now, it's not a legal text. It's a lot of stories. But there, I looked, and at first I thought that it was true with Noah's sons, because you always say Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But we're going to see in a minute that the Torah actually has a twist, and actually Shem is not the oldest son.
Wasn't Abraham the first
right?
one?
We don't hear about Abraham's siblings.
He's mentioned first.
On Nahor, we have.
Isn't
Nahor.
It
Nahor
says
is
he
his
had three
brother?
sons, Avraham, Haran, and Nahor.
Oh, right.
But Haran is killed.
Avram is-
Abraham dies.
Haran
Excuse me,
dies.
dies.
Right, but we don't-
Avram's
Haran
mentioned.
dies. Haran dies.
But Shem is mentioned first too, and he's not the oldest, so
Yeah, it's
that
not
doesn't
clear-
prove anything.
It's not clear
So.
who's the eldest. That's those of Abraham's brothers. It's not clear.
Right, right. Okay, let's start with Cain and Abel. And can I have a volunteer just start reading the text from Genesis 4?
And Abel was a shepherd of flocks, and Cain was a tiller of the soil. Now it came to pass at the end of days that Cain brought of the fruit of the soil an offering to the Lord. And Abel he too brought of the firstborn of his flocks, and of their fattest. And the Lord turned to Abel and to his offering. But to Cain and to his offering he did not turn, and it annoyed Cain exceedingly, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, Why are you annoyed, and why is your countenance fallen? Is it not so that if you improve it will be forgiven you? If you do not improve, however, at the entrance sin is lying, and to you is its longing, but you can rule over it. And Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and it came to pass that when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him.
Okay. There are a few ways that we know that Cain is not the favored brother. What are some ways?
His offering is not accepted.
Right. Now, we don't know what that means, accepted offer. At least not, and by the way, everything I'm talking about is based on the pshat, the text. You know, there are midrashim, we're not getting into those today. Because when I ask what's the theme of the book of Genesis, I'm treating it as a whole, working within it. When I say I'm treating it as a book of literature, that doesn't mean that I think it's not holy. I do think it's holy. I think it comes from God. But you're also able to look at it from different angles, and today we're looking at it as a book with a theme. So, based on just the text, we don't know what that means, to accept or not to accept. We also don't really know what it means. Is it not so that you will improve? Well, what does that mean, improve? So that's the first one, is that God literally treats Abel better, right? Later we talk about fathers treating their children better or worse. Adam is not here. Adam is absent here. It's God. Yes?
I've just noticed also from the text that it says, Cain brought of the fruit of the soil, and Abel he brought of the firstborn of his flocks. So it's if clearly Abel gave high priority to what he was giving, but it doesn't say necessarily that Cain did the same. He may have done, he may not have done, we're not told, but there's a possible inference that Cain thought, well, I'll give any old bit, I won't make a special offering. And therefore there was a difference in the quality.
I think that's a logical conclusion for what it says here. So, but the other thing is Cain killed his brother, so that he makes him the villain, right? So there are two ways. One is how God treats him, but second is how he behaves. In the story, he's not the hero. He's the villain, and of course Abel is the victim, right? So that's our first case. Can somebody read the second? And of all these, this is probably the one that gets the least attention. So please, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Don't make me call on you.
And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his two brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took the garment, and they placed it on both of their shoulders, and they walked backwards, and they covered their father's nakedness, and their faces were turned backwards, so they did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his small son had done to him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, he shall be a slave among slaves to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them. May God expand Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them.
Okay, first of all, what did Ham do that was so terrible?
violated his father. Either there's different midrashim about it, but either
No, we're looking at the. All right.
Yeah.
What do you think?
He
He
looked at his father's nakedness.
So what might be wrong about that?
He was disrespectful.
It's about dignity, because his father was drunk. His father was unprotected. He was literally unprotected. He didn't have clothing on, and it's about dignity and respect between the generations. But Noah passes it on to a second generation. He curses Canaan, who is Ham's son. And look at the blessing at the end. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Remember, the two good ones here are Japheth and Shem. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them. May God expand Japheth. This is a pun. Yift is to expand, and Japheth is the name. And may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them. If Japheth is dwelling in Shem's tents, then Shem is the favored one. Okay? Now, look at this next text about one
Sorry,
chapter later.
Before
Yeah,
you go on to the next step,
please.
you said what was wrong
Mhm.
with Ham seeing his father's nakedness and the brothers.
Mhm.
The brothers would not have gone in with modesty with the coat had Ham not informed them. They would also have seen his nakedness, and it was only because of Ham, who presumably had come across his father by accident, that the whole episode occurred. Now the
But
other
the thing was that
that
he was telling in public about the state of his father, and that was not.
Oh,
what he
yeah,
should have
nobody
done.
would know.
He should have
Noah would have
covered his
slept
father.
it off.
What is
He
the
would have
public,
woke
though?
up and it wouldn't have been.
But what is the public? There's 8 people.
You don't go about and telling,
Right.
"Hey, my father
Right.
is laying naked in the tent." You don't do
Right.
that.
Right, and he would have recovered from his drunkenness, gotten dressed, and it never would have been a thing if Ham hadn't come out and told people. Anyway, now look at this next text. I'll read it.
It also
Yeah.
says Noah knew he woke, and he knew what his small son had done to him. What had he done to him?
Yeah, no, we're sticking with text today.
Exactly. The midrash is very explicit.
It could, we don't know. It doesn't say, but I think it's logical to think it's related to embarrassing him, to exposing him, but it doesn't say explicitly.
He didn't do anything physical.
It doesn't say that he did.
There's
also the suggestion
some sort of violation is implied.
Yeah, some sort of violation
It also
is applied, and
suggests
some
that
sort
the
of
small son is
sexual
grandson.
connotation because it's about nakedness. So, yeah, there was actually I had a professor of religious studies in college who spoke about what it was like growing older and having to take care of his aging father, and he said, and it just struck me, it had these biblical overtones. He said, "I saw my father's nakedness for the first time." Like, that's how he described it. But it was poignant coming from him. One, that he was talking about how odd it was for him to clean his dad, or the kinds of things that you sometimes have to do when you take care of an aging parent. But also that he saw it in biblical overtones. Okay, this next text, which I'm going to read. And to Shem were also born children. He was the father of all the people of the other side of the river, the brother of Japheth the elder. Okay. Now,
JPS translation is different.
tell me, what does the JPS say?
The elder, unto Shem the father of all children of Ever, the elder brother of Japhet, to him were children born. It's not
Okay.
the same. It says there that Shem is the older brother of Japhet in the JPS.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's how you know it's not true, is the trup. Okay? Now the trup are the little cantillation marks that tell you how to sing and chant the Torah. And traditionally, they go way back. Orthodox Jews believe they go all the way back to Sinai, the cantillation marks. And a lot of people don't know about many of these cases, about when they help you interpret, but I'm going to give you one right now where it helps you interpret by knowing where the marks are. And there are two marks that go together when if the marks went with Achi Yefet Hagadol, that would mean what? Who's older? The brother of Japheth, the older one. Brother of Japheth, the older one.
I mean that he was older than Japhet.
Then he would be older than Japheth. If it's Achi Japheth Hagadol, then who's older? Japheth. The brother, and that's what the JPS, right? But the JPS isn't paying attention to the Trub. Because the Trub has Achi Japheth Hagadol. He's the brother of Japheth, and he's the older one. So, I had always, until a rabbi pointed out this to me as I was pointing this out, I said to him, well, this is the theme of the book of Genesis, except for Noah. He said, no. If you look at the Trup, you'll see that Shem, who's the blessed one, is the older, is the younger brother. Okay. Isaac and Ishmael. Who wants to read? I'll call on you. I will. There you go.
And God said, "Indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant to his seed after him. And regarding Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. He will beget 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year."
Okay, why, based on the text, why either here or from other parts of the Torah that you've read, why is it Isaac and not Ishmael who gets the blessing?
She's Sarah's son.
Yeah. It has to do with the matriarch is how that is determined, even though he's younger. And there is some conflict between the two of them, not nearly as much conflict as we see later in the cases in the next two generations. But there is conflict between them. But the younger one is the one that Abraham blesses. All right, the next case is probably the most bitter rivalry because they're twins. Or in part because they're twins. So let's look at Jacob and Esau, this key moment where Jacob pretends to be Esau and gets the blessing. And then Esau comes in and says, "Ooh." Someone?
And Isaac said, "Your brother came with cunning and took your blessing." And Esau said, "Is it for this reason that he was named Jacob? For he has deceived me twice. He took my birthright, and behold, now he has taken my blessing." And he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" And Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him a master over you, and I gave him all his brothers as servants, and I have sustained him with corn and wine. So for you then, what shall I do, my son?" And Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." And Esau raised his voice and wept. And his father Isaac answered him and said, "Behold, your dwelling place shall be the fat places of the earth, and of the dew of the heaven from above. And you shall live by the sword, and you shall serve your brother. And it will be, when you grieve, that you will break his yoke off your neck."
Okay. What kind of blessing is that? It's a blessing? God, may God never give you such a blessing, right? But hey, you get the fat places of the earth and the dew of the heaven. But sure, compared to your brother, you don't. Now, a lot of people make a mistake with the Jacob and Esau story, and they mix up the concept of birthright and the concept of blessing. So let's first discuss birthright, because it's significant, but this is also too. So somebody tell the story of what happens with the birthright with Jacob and Esau. Yeah.
Well, on the day repeatedly when Abraham died, Esau went out hunting. Jacob was making lentil soup of some kind. And Esau came back and said, "Oh, I'm famished, I'd like some of that." And Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "Well, what good is it to me if I starve to death?" "Yeah, you can have it." And he gave him the soup, and that's basically the story.
And what is the birthright? What is a birthright?
Presumably acknowledgement that you are the primary son because you're the oldest. But I don't know what the actual detail is.
See, it seems to me that what you just described is the blessing. That the birthright is more about possessions and physical inheritance. Because if you look at the blessing, it's this line that we read in the last paragraph, from Abraham to Isaac, whose covenant, whose promise of eternal relationship with God, who does that go through? That's the blessing.
I think it's probably that the firstborn will be the leader of the clan once his father has died. It's like in a monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is whether Yaakov or Esau will be the next in succession.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a country, don't remember which one it is, but like the monarch seems to be waiting until the next generation dies. She just keeps going and going and going because I think she doesn't want her kid to become the ruler. I don't know, some country.
Would it be your monarch if you didn't have a hissy fit when you couldn't make tea?
All right, so let's move on. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, and that's this morning. We read this section of the Torah. This is it's a little strange because this part comes before the next generation, but the whole story about Reuben. This is the blessing. But the story about Reuben and Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda and Joseph, all that stuff takes place over the previous 10 chapters or so. It's easy to remember what happened 10 chapters earlier because in the Joseph play, in the song about Potiphar, they go, "It's all there in chapter 39 of Genesis." It's a very easy way to remember what happens when. Anyway, so let's, before we read this, what's the news? There are a couple of moments where there's news in the book of Genesis about Reuben. What did Reuben do that we remember, that is noted in Sefer Bereshit?
Switching the mandrakes.
Okay.
So, like buying whatever, like switching
Diamond.
He moved.
the bedding.
Okay, he moved his mother's bed.
Giving the mandrakes to his mother's instead of whatever he gave it to his mother.
Right, and it's a little vague. We don't know exactly what happens. It's been interpreted as he slept with his father's concubine. It's been that he tried to improve his mother's relationship with his father, but something sexual happened, whether literally or symbolically, involving the oldest son, Reuben. But something else important happened.
He saved Judah. He tried to save Joseph's life.
What did he do?
By trying to sell him, with the pit, when the brothers were going to kill him, he planned to sort of get him out of the pit and sell him to the Midianites.
Okay. So, and is that a good thing or a bad thing?
And the other thing was when Shimon was held captive in Egypt and came back, and they had the message saying, "Don't go back again unless you bring a younger son with you." And Jacob said, "Well, hang on, I've already lost 2 sons. I don't fancy losing any more. And how can I be sure that he'll be safe?" And Reuben said, "Look, take him. If anything happens, you can kill my 2 sons."
All right. But let's go back to the previous. Is it good or bad that he threw Joseph into the pit? Is that heroic or is that evil?
That's good, but not good enough.
Okay. So it's a little of each, right? He didn't simply save Joseph. It was a compromise.
His plan didn't work. He can't.
Well, that's the other thing, right? The way it turned out, it was a failure.
Could theoretically, if it had worked, it would have been possibly a good thing, but
Yeah.
he didn't work out all the details of it.
It was half-baked. Okay. All right, now let's talk about Shimon and Levi. What did they do that is news in the book of Genesis?
Going after the Shechem?
Right.
The town of Shechem.
They massacred an entire city when the city was at its weakest, and when all the men had been circumcised, and they were in the greatest pain. They went in and they wiped them out. And that was not something that their father Jacob approved of. So let's see what the blessing is. Someone, please.
Okay.
Sure.
Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first of my might. You should have been superior in rank and superior in power. You have the restlessness of water. Therefore you shall not have superiority. For you ascended upon your father's couch, then you profaned him who ascended unto my bed. Simeon and Levi are brothers, stolen instruments of their weapons. Let my soul not enter their council. My honour you shall not join their assembly. For in their wrath they killed a man, and with their will they hamstrung a bull. Cursed be their wrath, for it is mighty, and their anger because it is hard.
Okay, by the way, just before you go on, this is another blessing that I wouldn't want either, right? So he and his father both have this ability to give a backhanded compliment, which if you know Jewish mother-in-laws, you're probably very familiar with that kind of blessing. Anyway, go ahead.
Are these even blessings?
Right, well,
It's not clear. It's just fortune telling.
Oh, okay. That's one way of looking at
It's
it.
Acharita is, he's not telling you it's blessing, he's telling you the Acharit Yamim.
Okay.
It's just being told this is what your future is going to be. So
The alternative hypothesis, which is written by the weekly writing by Lord Sachs, is pointedly not predicting.
Yeah, no, but if it says, cursed be your wrath, that's not just a prediction.
it's not a
That is
blessing.
it's
a statement of what's going to be in the future.
no, if he's saying cursed, he's saying, this is what I want. This is my opinion. It's not simply a fortune telling, right? It could be. I guess, yeah, well, let's move on.
I will separate them throughout Jacob, and I will scatter them throughout Israel. Judah, as for you, your brothers will acknowledge you. Your hand will be at the nape of your enemies, and your father's sons will prostrate themselves. A cub and a grown lion is Judah. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion who will rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the student from the law from between his feet. And Shiloh comes, and to him will be a gathering of peoples.
Okay, your father's sons, meaning your brothers. Strange that he didn't say your brothers. Okay, your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. What does that echo? Will prostrate themselves
Everyone
to
bowed down to Joseph.
you. To Joseph, right? In the same series of stories, we have the idea that it's Joseph to whom, based on his dreams, right? To whom, but here he's saying it's Judah. And this is important because if you read most of the second half of Genesis and you want to know who is the favored son, you might think it's Joseph. He's the Ben Zekunim, he's the son of his old age with a special relationship, and is Jacob favors Joseph, and he goes down to Egypt, and there's all this special relationship. But here's a moment where you know that it's Judah that is the one who is favored. And by the way, it's really important because from Judah comes
Kings.
and later
and
eventually Messiah. There you go. Keep going. Eventually the Messiah.
So do you don't think that this is the theme of the book of Genesis?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That the justification of the Davidic dynasty versus Mashiach ben Yosef, like this whole Judah versus Joseph, isn't like what is all leading to, like to culminate all this.
But that isn't. That doesn't answer my question about primogeniture because neither of them are the oldest. So we're going to have to examine why it's never the oldest that is.
Joseph is the oldest from his mother, but
Okay, out of 2. Okay. All right. So let's move on and let's do Ephraim and Manasseh. Someone volunteer? Yes.
And Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him. So he held up his father's hand to remove it from upon Ephraim's head, to place it on Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not so, father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused, and he said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. But his younger brother will be greater than he, and his children's fame will fill the nations." So he blessed them on that day, saying, "With you Israel will bless. With you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." And he placed Ephraim before Manasseh.
Okay. So who's the older?
Manasseh.
Manasseh is the older, and who's the favored? Ephraim. Okay. Why is the older not the favored one in this case?
Jacob was the younger one and he wanted to pass the same thing on.
Okay, it could just be the tradition. This is what happens in this family. That's one explanation. What else? What else? What is it?
Except Jacob saw the turmoil that ensued from his becoming favored.
So therefore he might not want to.
Why did he do it again?
Yeah, he might not want to. But in terms of the personal characteristics, we have that about Shimon and Levi. We have that about Reuven. We even have it about Yishmael. We certainly have it about Esav. We have it about Ham. We have it about Cain. What about the personal characteristics of Ephraim and Manasseh are such that he puts Ephraim before Manasseh?
I don't think we're told, are we?
We're not. We don't know. And here's the weird part about it. Why is this, of all the blessings, why is this the most important one?
Because that's the one we use today.
Exactly. So, every Friday night, in thousands and thousands of Jewish homes, for centuries and centuries and centuries, fathers have placed their hands on their sons, including when there's more than one son in the room, and they almost always start with the older. Ironic. And they say, may God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. So it clearly matters. And by the way, we don't know. I've asked around. I've never gotten a good answer. We don't know why it's may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, and not may God make you as David and Mordechai. They were some pretty terrific Jewish heroes in the past. There's something going on in this moment in our parsha, in Parshat Vayechi, that is so important that every Friday night we pass on this blessing for two relatively anonymous in terms of their character traits, people from the Torah. Okay. So
it's also significant that Joseph claims Ephraim and Manasseh as his own sons, and he says only the sons that will come later will be Joseph's sons, but Ephraim and Manasseh he will regard as his own sons.
As Jacob's sons.
Yeah, as
Jacob's sons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're tribes like everybody else.
Yeah.
So, let's start to ask my question, which is, there's a couple of questions, but let's start with this one. I think I've made a case that something's going on in this book of Bereshit about older sons don't deserve to be treated any special or any different. They aren't the heroes. Okay, so I want to start with some possibilities, and I also want to hear what you have to say. But I want to throw some out there, see how these work for you. It would seem that one way to interpret it is as the argument of equality. everybody's the same. Don't treat one of your sons more favorite than the other, because Judaism believes in a radical equality that everybody, or at least all men, have an equal chance at a good relationship with God. Does that work?
No.
Why not?
Because of Yosef.
Okay, go on.
Well, the whole story of Yosef is a story of favoritism towards one son out of 12 sons.
Yeah, that turned out.
So apparently that is not the theme of Breshit.
Uh-huh.
How did that turn out?
Sorry?
How did that turn out?
Well, very bad, but it is still the whole theme of the Joseph story is the favoritism of one son over the rest.
Any other reactions to my question about, could it be about equality?
It couldn't be, because the stories don't talk about equality. They actually, the younger sons rise way above the older sons.
Exactly.
They don't come to the same level.
Exactly. So there is a winner. In each generation, there is a son who's favored. It just doesn't happen to be the oldest son. Okay. That's, we can set that one aside because it's probably not the case. Is it about merit?
Not Ephraim and Manasseh necessarily, because we don't know enough.
Okay. What about Shem and Japhet? Why is it Shem and not his older brother Japhet who gets treated special?
No reason given.
We don't know, right? So I guess, there is midrash and there could be other ways of looking at it, but based on the text of the Torah, it doesn't seem like merit is what's going on here. Yes?
Well, the midrash you allude to is based on the fact that it says something like Shem and Japhet places the blanket. So in the singular, so it says why there were two people. Why is it singular? Because one took the initiative and the other
It doesn't say
followed.
which though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right. That's right. You don't have a subject of that. Right.
That's why the Midrashim come to try to
Right.
add details theoretically.
The question exists because the Torah doesn't tell us. So if we treat it like a meritocracy, it's because we're sticking it onto the text. And sometimes we have to do that. But the text isn't coming out and saying, well, look, the theme of the book of Genesis is it's the best son who is always favored. All right, so now that we've taken those two ideas, which to me are the most logical ones, and we've thrown them away, I'll ask my question and hear what you have to say. Why would God or the divine or other author, depending on what kind of background you have, why would the Torah send us this message that it's not the oldest son is not the favored son? Yeah.
Don't stop having one child, have more than one child, because younger child you'll then produce a better one, which will give you a better performance in the long term.
Okay, it's a reproductive strategy for increasing the family size.
If we want to look at the non-traditional idea of biblical authorship, one might say, well, it's the Davidic dynasty, the Davidic line later on that's writing this stuff, and wants to, or priestly line, whatever, some other line that's not the firstborn, and it's trying to justify their own.
If it was the priestly line, wouldn't it be Levi?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Either,
right?
Either Levi or Judah, or this fine. You
right.
could argue the different authors. In the
But Levi is not a hero.
What-
Levi is never a hero in the book of Genesis.
Not in the book of Genesis.
And I would-
Right. Well, the
Who-
question is
who-
about the book of Genesis.
Book, whatever.
Okay.
Book.
But
It's possible-
my question is about Genesis,
Okay, so
and it can't be the priest because Levi is not the hero.
I'm not saying the priest. The
Okay.
priest didn't necessarily write that. It
Right.
might have been written by, assuming again, I'm not saying I believe
Right.
in this stuff, but
Yeah.
assuming that the author was someone from the Davidic line, then it would make sense that you write the book of Genesis to justify how Judah prevails, and the priestly book, or the Leviticus, whatever, suddenly the priests are important. You have like someone in the priestly line writing that kind of thing.
If the author of the Torah, whether it's capital A or lowercase a, the author of the Torah is trying to use the book of Genesis to justify the dominance of Judah, why are all 5 of these other stories?
Just to demonstrate that it's all in line. It makes sense. Like it's consistent. That the first one doesn't emerge as the
Okay.
predominant. Maybe.
Okay. Other ideas? Yeah.
The story needs to be reinforced in every generation, certainly of the early family, to prove that it wasn't just a one-off. You know, if you had, say, Abel rather than Cain, and then you didn't have superior younger sons for the next few generations, and might say, well, that was a one-off. It was an exception to the normal rule. Whereas here, it's keep banging that hammer to say no, it is always, or it is very often, the younger child. Another example you might say is Leah and Rachel, in that Rachel was preferred. Her son was the favoured emotional.
Great example. I hadn't thought of that. That's an excellent point.
It carries on. I mean, all right. Rachel had more children, but Rachel's children were more prominent in the story and arguably later on as well, and more favoured by Jacob. So that's a point to bear in mind.
A lot of people like to tell reasons that the Torah comes along and brings beautiful ideas to humanity, and there certainly are lots of things that improve upon the way the world was before God gave the Torah. And that's anywhere from vast improvement in the way slaves are treated to the concept of Shemitah. We determined that you let the land lie fallow every 7th year, which increases yields in the Torah, and it does today because you gotta let the crop rotation, right? We figured that out, or we got that from a higher authority. So there's a lot of things that the Torah brought. And I would love to be able to take this and say, primogeniture, male primogeniture is this terrible system. It's existed throughout the world, through many cultures. It existed in Russia until 1917. It still exists in many parts of India, and it's wrong and it's not fair. And the book of Genesis came along and smashed it. And then the book of Deuteronomy came along and brought it back.
It's also, if you think about it, it's not just Genesis, unless I misremember, which I don't think I do. In Greek mythology, Zeus was the youngest of the gods. His father had eaten all the others.
Okay.
And his mother gave him a stone instead because she saw what happened to the others. And Zeus, who was the youngest, became the chief god. So it's not just Jewish mythology, if you like, that that's the youngest coming out on top.
All right, but my question, though, is about law, right? I don't know that the Greeks had this tension between, right? But my question is, I'd love to tell that story about, look at the Jews, look at our God. He smashed this terrible practice in other cultures that treats people poorly. But I can't say that because the book of Deuteronomy commands us not to act in the spirit of what the book of Genesis teaches us. What is that about? Yeah.
I think the book of Genesis is really different from the other ones in that it's storytelling rather than telling rules and things. And there's a sort of, the theme, it seems, of Genesis is the sort of subversion of the pre-existing order. And that's with Abraham and the idols, and
it's actually not in the
that's
text.
not, but he was living in an idol-worshipping society, and he worshipped one god. He was subverting the system, and with the Akedah, not sacrificing his son in the end, and not the oldest child not being the favoured one, and sort of usurping the what should have been according to the norms of society. That's what it seems to me. And then whereas we don't get any instruction, overt instruction from Genesis. We're given, we sort of get a feeling of what the Torah is, and then we get the explicit what to do. And I get that like the sort of feeling I get from it is that the nation of Israel is this crazy exciting sort of subversive culture. But don't go too crazy with it. Here are the rules.
All right. What you're saying would be more convincing to me if there were examples in the last 4 books of working against the message of the Akedah, and messages in the last 4 books working against the message of the idols. And there aren't. Thank God. There aren't. So yeah.
It occurs to me that the superiority or perceived superiority of the younger child is one of spiritual superiority and the spiritual message and promise being carried forward. And what the quote in Deuteronomy about is material stuff. So Abraham, so Jacob isn't saying to his sons, Judah, I'm giving you more shekels than I'm giving the other kids.
Okay, but Isaac was.
Well,
and Abraham was.
Yeah,
Abraham
but
left his estate to Isaac.
Yeah, but he's also said to Ishmael, you're going to have 12 princes and all the rest of it.
But that's a blessing. That's not a gift.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it didn't automatically. So perhaps what Deuteronomy is saying is, even though we've got all these messages that the younger child might be the more talented one and better fitted to receive the spiritual message for reasons of character, don't over-egg the pudding and give them all the money as well. And remember, if you like, remember to give the firstborn the fruit of your loins. And the idea of firstborn, you give your firstborn sheep, young sheep or whatever it is, your firstborn fruit, all the rest of it, is what you dedicate. And so your firstborn son has an important place, and therefore they're entitled, because they're firstborn, to a bit more money.
All right.
So if you got, you give them more shekels, the other person's going to get the spiritual benefits of carrying on the promise. So they're kind of complementary rather than contradictory.
Sir.
Yes. One thing about the firstborn is that since when he's born, he's the only one, he tends to think he's unique in the world. Okay, and that appears very clearly with Cain, where Chava says, "Kaniti ishet et Elohim." So I acquired a man, and so he has no idea of otherness. While the second-born, he has to deal with the presence of the other. So he has to deal with the alterity. So he's more prone to be moral because he has to take into account the other.
I want to go up a level right now, and I want to ask you a question. Is the Jewish people the eldest?
Eldest of what?
Are we the eldest nation? The eldest, right?
Yes and no.
Right.
We're not the oldest nation because there were other civilizations before. But
right.
God says, "Beni Bechori."
Okay,
Israel.
but we are. I'm suggesting that we're the favored nation,
Yes.
right? And so, is it possible that the Book of Genesis is getting us ready for the special relationship that happens at Sinai by sending a message to anybody who reads Bereshit that you don't have to be the oldest to be the favorite and the special, because that's what's going to happen in the rest of the Torah?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So. I don't think so, because the problem with the Jews has been not age, it's been lack of power. And the story in Genesis it's purely, from what we've gone through, it's about who's the oldest, who's the youngest. It's not who's the biggest, who's the strongest, who's the most powerful. And if it was meant to be a message about the fact that you don't have to be the most powerful to succeed, it would have had that. That's not what we have.
I didn't say powerful.
Well, I know.
I said oldest.
Yes, but I think the more powerful would have been Yeah, that would have been the more logical thing to do. If
Okay.
you wanted to convey that sort of message, then talking about primogeniture would be an odd way of doing it.
All right.
Doing it,
Well,
I
that's,
think.
that's kind of what Jacob and Esau was, as well as age. Like, Esau was stronger and faster and...
Harrier.
Yeah, he
Yes,
was...
and Ishmael bullied Isaac because he was
Yeah.
younger. Yeah.
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 No, the point, like, with Jacob and Esau, Jacob was weaker than Esau, as well as younger.
But that falls down when you get to Ephraim, Manasseh, and Shem, and Japheth.
True, but we don't really know about them.
No,
We don't know,
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I want some other. I just gave you an out-of-the-box explanation. I want. We're running out of time. I want 2 more. You have an assignment. Think about it. I want 2 more good ones. Out-of-the-box explanations for why the Torah, why the book of Genesis seems to favor and praise younger children. And if you want, you can work in explaining why the law doesn't do that. So, actually, talk amongst yourselves. Take a couple of minutes. See if you can come up with something with the person next to you.
And why do we choose Ephraim and Manasseh to bless?
Yeah, that's another good question. They weren't what?
They weren't jealous of one another.
Oh, okay.
Just saying, well,
Yeah, that's good. The first ones that got along.
the younger one as well marry.
Yeah.
He's not always the youngest either. Yehuda was not the youngest.
I can't.
I gave
Benjamin was the youngest. Yeah. So not the first one, that's automatically a child. It has to be the youngest. David was the youngest. Solomon may or may not have been the youngest.
It's interesting that at least he was not the oldest.
Your descendants will be like stars in the sky, and
Yes.
they'll have their own land, right? That promise is basically Genesis is. That's the central thing. What's being passed on, and so that promise is being passed on to the younger kids, not the older kids.
You see,
It has to be
lots of people think that the salvation is actually you get more simplified by not following the rules of the oldest. So it's supposed to
No, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. This thing about Rachel and Leah never struck me. There is another old one who is not the favorite. So
It's another example.
yeah, so we're now up to 7. There are 7 kids.
I think
That's now 7 kids in the book of Genesis, where it's the younger. Okay, I want to hear. There's got to be at least 2 in the room. We have one right here. Do we have one?
I think I have a...
Okay, quiet, please, everyone. We have our first right here.
We learn in Genesis that people don't behave by rules. I mean, Cain kills his brother, but that's quite definitely against the rule. Jacob married Leah and Rachel, the same 2 sisters at the same time, which is specifically forbidden in Leviticus. Now you can either say, well, yes, that's showing a development, but the rabbis and the midrashim say, oh no, they taught Torah to their children even though it hadn't been given yet. What I learned from Bereshit is that our forefathers were a dysfunctional family. They didn't necessarily follow rules. And here are just 6 examples of one rule that wasn't being followed. We did say earlier there are other families in Bereshit, maybe not as well described as these, where primogeniture did seem to apply. So it's just one other thought, that we're full of people, we are a people who don't like rules and don't obey them.
Okay, I like that, especially in the context of Deuteronomy saying, we don't agree with the theme in Genesis. Okay, a second one.
Thoughts occurred to me, apart from lectures I've been to. The first sibling rivalry was terrible. It ended up with a death.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, the civil rising and they're nasty, but they're not ending up with a death like Cain and Abel. when you've got the story, Jacob's about to die, the brothers are scared that Joseph will not be nice to them, and they say, no, look, we're all happy together. Joseph, I'm not going to kill them, although I could. Hey, Jacob, here Israel, we're all brothers, we're going to be 12 nations, and then we'll be happy together.
Okay, I got my 2. Thank you. Before we finish up, I just want to tell you what I'm doing next. I have 2 more sessions here at Limmud. The one tomorrow is called Hebrew for Grammar Nerds. And it is a chance to learn all the little details of Hebrew grammar that you were never told. So for example, when people learn to read Hebrew, you're told that the T-bar, the kamatz, is pronounced ah. But in the word for all, kol, it's pronounced o, kol. And you're explained, well, trust me, I'm not going to explain it to you. That's how it's always taught. Probably because who's ever teaching it doesn't know themselves. Well, if you come to my session, you'll find out. A lot of little things like that. When is a shva like pronounced like you sound it, like shema? And when is it silent, like viahavta? It's not viahavita, it's viahavta. We'll learn that too. So that's Hebrew for Grammar Nerds, and that's tomorrow. And then the day after that is called Chiasms, the Bible's dazzling literary structure. And it's about this way that the Torah and many Jewish texts tends to unfold is chiastically, which is like a palindrome. Palindrome is the same backwards and forwards for letters. This is for words, concepts, and events. The Torah is filled with this structure, and there will be tons of examples, and I will teach you a new skill of how to recognize a chiasm that will change the way you look at Jewish texts forever. Special session that is on Monday. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is I am available to teach at Limmud. I have some funds I can use to travel, so if you're in another city and you'd like me to come, you don't have to fly me in. Let me know, invite me, and I'd love to come teach where you live.
That's right.
Thank you. Sure. Sure. Thank you. Thanks for your participation.